Detective Aaliyah Hasan sat in her cramped office, the air heavy with an early April storm brewing outside, the city's constant hum, tires skidding on rain-slick streets, distant sirens, muffled voices filtered in through cracked window panes. On her desk, a worn brown folder waited amid the clutter. Case file, number 1289, Kelsey Monroe, Unsolved, 38 years cold. It was one of dozens stacked along the dusty shelves, but this one haunted her most. River City had changed a lot in her 2 decades on the force, and Aaliyah felt every one of those years, especially those last 6 spent in the department's cold case unit. Shops had shut down on Bridge Street, factories converted to galleries and lofts, but Kelsey's spirit seemed to linger, tangled in the city's transformation. Sometimes, when Aaliyah drove home under drizzle and half-lit neon, she saw the ghost of the girl in her imagination, striding along the sidewalk beneath the bakery's faded sign. Aaliyah had her rituals, especially with cold cases. She would make tea in her battered mug, spread photos and reports in a meticulous grid, trace timelines and movement with colored pens across old maps. Tonight, she cradled the mug in both hands and stared at the case photo. Kelsey at 19, bright blonde hair and a smile so hopeful it made the detective ache. Notes from old interviews ringed the page like scars, her mother's trembling hands on a tissue, her little brother Danny's angry silence, the bakery owner's confused grief. Kelsey vanished just after her last shift, July 5th, 1987. The night had been unremarkable. She'd clocked out at 2:08 a.m., waved goodbye to a co-worker, and walked into a mild summer rain. Somewhere between the bakery and her tiny apartment, only 3 blocks away, she disappeared. Her body was discovered 3 weeks later in a shallow grave at an abandoned rail yard 6 miles from Bridge Street. Asphyxiation, no witnesses, no clear suspects. In the late 80s, homicide detectives had worked the case hard for months, but ran up against a wall. Evidence mishandled, a corrupt patrol officer quietly discharged, rumors that never panned out. Digital records didn't exist, and so much got lost over time. Some of Kelsey's belongings, purse, shoes, were never recovered. Speculation shifted between a stalker, a jealous ex, and wild random violence. Now in 2025, all that remained were notes, faces grayed by decades, official disappointments, and Aaliyah's stubborn hope. She reached for a notepad and wrote, "What did the bakery owner see? Who worked that night? Why was the rail yard locked up 2 days after the discovery?" Years ago, the chief had told her, "You chase ghosts, detective." But Aaliyah believed every ghost deserved, if not peace, at least acknowledgement. A sudden thunderclap rattled her office window. She flinched, forcing herself away from memory. She surveyed the folder again, but tonight, a small slip of paper, yellowed and tucked deep in the back, caught her attention. Interview notes, E. Harper. She hadn't looked at Edwin Harper in months. Fired from the bakery just weeks before Kelsey vanished. History of disputes. No confirmed alibi. As she circled his name, her phone buzzed, an email alert. The subject flashed, "Forensics. Possible new DNA match. Urgent." Aaliyah's pulse spiked. She swung her chair toward the computer, opened the email from Sasha Khan, the department's gifted forensic specialist. Aaliyah clicked rapidly through Sasha Khan's email. The message was detailed, technical, and buzzing with cautious excitement. Detective, reanalyzed the partial DNA recovered from Kelsey Monroe's scarf and fingernails. Used new genealogy cross-referencing. There's a probabilistic 19.95% match to a male relative with a line tracing to the Monroe family. No direct criminal record, but with your notes about Edwin Harper and his connection to Bridge Street, this is worth a deep re-examination. Attached were lab reports, gene sequencing charts, and a summary of how national databases could now process familial DNA, flagging links within extended family trees even if a suspect hadn't been charged before. One hit. Edwin Harper, baker, fired, rumored violent outbursts, moved repeatedly over the years before returning to River City 5 years ago. The database marked him through a sibling's distant DNA match in a court-ordered sample from another state. Aaliyah pushed aside fatigue and started building a timeline. Edwin Harper had always been on the periphery, He'd worked the night shift, been seen arguing with Kelsey about bakery schedules, and was let go due to temper issues. No one had ever pinned down his whereabouts after that fateful July night. Past colleagues remembered his odd behavior. One recalled Harper hanging around after closing, watching Kelsey walk out alone. Ray Jefferson, summoned from home by Aaliyah's insistent message, trudged in, grumbling but curious. He poured himself bitter coffee and hunched over the evidence table. "So, what's the play, Hasan?" "We're chasing a ghost with some jeans attached." "Not a ghost," she replied. "A man who's been hiding in plain sight." They mapped Harper's movements. Where he lived in '87, jobs held after his dismissal, the trail that led him out of state, then back to River City. It was like tracing a shadow. He changed addresses often, stayed in cheap apartments, worked cash jobs, police records on petty disturbances, but nothing serious. Yet everything about him felt off. They interviewed bakery workers from that summer, some now scattered across the country. Aaliyah called an old manager, now retired in Florida. "Harper," she said, voice wavering. "Never liked him. Always too quiet, but angry. You could feel it. Kelsey helped him after a bad cut once, and he got obsessed with her. The week before she died, he hung around at a closing. First time I ever locked him out myself." Aaliyah jotted every detail. Ray tracked down Harper's old addresses and pieced together forgotten police incidents. Reports of trespassing, confrontations on Bridge Street, one involving a vandalized car belonging to Kelsey's roommate. Sasha informed them on a new front. Old fibers caught in Harper's apartment cleanup, nearly identical to those on the scarf found with Kelsey's body. "This is strong," Sasha said. "With genealogy pushing into the scene, you're a hair away from probable cause." That night, Aaliyah walked Bridge Street herself. Neon reflected in puddles. Shadows stretched from the bakery ruins to the nearest bus stop, just like the night Kelsey disappeared. She let herself imagine Kelsey stepping into the rain, moving under the awning, not realizing someone, Harper, lurked nearby. Aaliyah returned to her office and thumbed through city building permits, noticing Harper had briefly lived in an apartment overlooking the rail yard, right where Kelsey was found. The connection was too strong to ignore. Ray suggested they visit Harper directly. He's old, but sometimes old secrets want out. They planned their approach. Warrants for DNA, calls for backup, readying the confrontation. Next morning, the city shivered under a gray sky as Aaliyah and Ray drove toward the dilapidated building where Edwin Harper now lived. The elevator was broken, graffiti marked the halls, and each step up the stairs echoed in stale air. Harper's apartment door showed scratch marks on the frame, years of use and neglect. They knocked. After a pause, Harper opened the door. He was thinner than his old photos, stooped, pale, suspicious. His eyes darted over their badges, lingering on the case folder in Aaliyah's grip. "We need to talk about the night Kelsey Monroe disappeared," Aaliyah said quietly. Harper hesitated. "I already told the police everything, 38 years ago. But there are new findings," Ray pressed. "Genealogy, forensics, DNA, old interviews. Your name is all over the file." Aaliyah noted his trembling hands, his defensive posture. She asked about his job at the bakery, his last day, his knowledge of the rail yard. Harper dodged. "I left. I had trouble with the manager. Kelsey was kind, but we weren't friends." Ray produced Harper's old letter to the bakery co-worker. Harper stared at it, then looked away. "I was upset. She was good to me and I ruined everything." Aaliyah pressed harder. "We found fibers from your old apartment on the scarf discovered with Kelsey's body. The lab matched your family DNA to under her fingernails. This isn't an accusation. It's your chance to tell the truth." Harper's face drained of color. He nearly collapsed into the kitchen chair and began to talk, halting, desperate, sometimes incoherent. In flashes, he described that night, closing the bakery, following Kelsey at a distance, an argument near the rain-slicked alley. Flashbacks flickered through his voice, punctuated by rain and neon. Harper waits for Kelsey, lurks by the back door. Kelsey fumbles with her apartment keys. Harper approaches. Words are exchanged. Suddenly, Kelsey shouts at him, rain pounding down. He grabs her. She fights, slips on the wet concrete, a struggle in the shadows. In panic, Harper covers her mouth. Momentary silence, the city's noise swallowed by guilt. Harper sobs. "I didn't mean to kill her. Aaliyah feels the weight of the years. She offers him water, keeps the questions gentle but firm, lets him speak through his shame. Ray moves through the apartment, finds a storage box full of Bridge Street memorabilia, old newspaper clippings, yellowed bakery aprons, city maps with hand-drawn lines from the bakery to the rail yard. Aaliyah calls Sasha, who arrives to swab Harper's cheek for a final direct DNA sample. When Harper is taken to the station, the city outside is silent, as if waiting for the truth to finally emerge. That afternoon, Aaliyah reviews the crime scene files again. Now, with the confession, every missed clue sharpens. The alley eyewitness who'd been ignored, the bus stop camera footage erased in an office flood, a coroner's report noting finger bruises but never pursued. She writes it all anew. The media begins to circle. A wave of hope and pain moves through River City. At the old bakery's ruins, someone leaves a lantern glowing all night. The news spread quickly through River City. An arrest after nearly 4 decades in the infamous Bridge Street case. That evening, Aaliyah sat at her desk, exhaustion seeping through her bones as she prepared reports for the DA's office. Sasha emailed her final verification. Harper's DNA was a conclusive match. Aaliyah called Kelsey's family. Her mother, now frail and living in assisted care, wept gently. I always hoped someone would remember her. Danny, Kelsey's younger brother, described how his life had been shaped by tragedy, trust issues, anger, but also a fierce longing for justice. Their words hung with Aaliyah as she drove home. The city blurred through rain. In the next week, River City Police held a press conference. Chief Lawrence thanked Aaliyah and her team, emphasized the importance of forensic science, and reminded the press of the human side. The Monroe family's 40-year wait for answers. Reporters asked uncomfortable questions. Why hadn't Harper been caught sooner? How had the system failed? Behind the scenes, Ray and Sasha compiled an airtight case. They reconstructed the movements of that night. Kelsey's final steps, Harper's presence, evidence lost and found. Sasha animated timelines with new forensic revelations. Microfibers linking Harper's old apron, pollen traces from rail yard weeds matching his shoes, and the undeniable DNA under Kelsey's fingernails. In her office, Aaliyah prepared psychological profiles, pieced Harper's mental state together. He was not evil, she concluded, just broken, desperate, lost. Still, she remembered Kelsey's bright eyes and knew intention didn't change consequence. The DA consulted with Aaliyah, Ray, and Sasha for hours, drafting a strategy strong enough to weather the defense's likely focus on time lapse, evidence decay, and unreliable memory. They acknowledged the pitfalls, missing witnesses, deceased officers, gaps in records. But the new forensic trail, Harper's confession, and supporting interviews built a powerful narrative. Kelsey became a symbol in the city. Vigils were held at the Bridge Street bakery ruins. Students at her old university dedicated a day to remember victims of unresolved violence. A mural appeared, her smile lighting up a wall facing the rail yard. Aaliyah met privately with Kelsey's mother. They talked for hours about grief, hope, and closure. "I just wanted someone to look," she whispered, clutching the detective's hand. Spring arrived, and River City bloomed with cautious optimism. Aaliyah felt the quiet pride of a promise kept, but also the burden of many cold cases left. Kelsey's file, once a constant weight, now had an ending, though imperfect, stitched by time, loss, and discovery. The news spread quickly through River City. An arrest after nearly 4 decades in the infamous Bridge Street case. That evening, Aaliyah sat at her desk, exhaustion seeping through her bones as she prepared reports for the DA's office. Sasha emailed her final verification. Harper's DNA was a conclusive match. Aaliyah called Kelsey's family. Her mother, now frail and living in assisted care, wept gently. I always hoped someone would remember her. Danny, Kelsey's younger brother, described how his life had been shaped by tragedy. Kelsey's file, once a constant weight, now had an ending, though imperfect, stitched by time, loss, and discovery.